What do I roll? Some suggestions and ways that I create roles for my World of Darkness 5th edition games. There is official rulings mixed in with my own interpretations of rules to help you decide what you need to roll or what you could roll to make your roles more exciting. The rulebook has common roles listed for ease and to give everyone an idea on what they need to roll to accomplish a certain task, as well as a difficulty system to judge the difficulty of that task. A dice roll request should only be made if there is an issue caused, if there is failure, or if a really good roll can change an outcome. There is no reason to make a player roll for menial tasks or tasks that have no ill effect in the game. Simply making someone make a drive roll to go to the corner store is ridiculous unless an incident is to occur that could change the outcome, such as an enemy sees the character and decides to pursue, or a person stumbles into the character's driving path. You shouldn't ever have to make a roll to read a book unless there is information in the book that can be helpful to the character or helpful later on in the story. In the case where the knowledge is important, what I do is make a list from 1 to 5 and write down what each success means. Normally, I do not list things above 5 as my personal preference. Here is an example of what I would write down. 1. The character notices that the wording of some parts of the story are leading to something, or they are just written badly. 2. The character notices that there are a few play on words within the texts as well that stand out to him, but he is unable to figure out what the writer is getting at. If the player rolls a 1, they do not get the next level of information, but if they rolled 2 successes on their roll, they would get both. At the 3rd success, they start seeing deeper into the hidden messages within the book. 3. The character notices that the play on words are clues. The author writes that the portrait's tulips are pursed as if angry at something, instead of writing 2 lips. The previous paragraph mentioned cooking flour instead of flour. 4 or more. The character discovers that the clues lead him to understand that there is something of importance in the flower garden behind the house, buried under the fountain. Another way of doing this, if you prefer an easier way, is just set the difficulty for the roll at 4, and anything less, that 4 hint that there is something more to the book, but the character is unable to figure out exactly what it is. I, of course, prefer my way, as it gives some clues, regardless of successes, giving the player or players a chance to figure it out on their own. Now, when you're creating a role for something, you must choose, generally, 1 attribute plus 1 skill to make your dice pool. Then assign a difficulty for the role. I like to mix things up a bit at times to utilize all attributes so all of them have importance. In games such as D&D, there is an issue with dump stats, and I don't want that ever to creep into my World of Darkness games. All attributes and skills have their value in my games. Of course, there are still some that get used more so than others, but I tend to substitute quite a bit to keep those from being the only option so players don't lean too heavily on those go-to skills or attributes. When picking the attribute, I use this chart to give me ideas on what I can use or substitute for the norm. Strength, fighting up close, being physically intimidating, raw strength needed. Dexterity, fine motor skills, agility, graceful actions. Stamina, endurance, physical resistance, and the character's peak physical condition. Charisma, natural charm, presence, social actions. Manipulation, convincing others, deceiving others, hiding things from others. Composure, keeping your cool under pressure and controlling your emotions. Intelligence, reason, logic, researching wits. Mental reaction time, quickly figuring out things, noticing things. Resolve, mental fortitude, determination, and ability to focus. Now I'm going to go through the attributes using the firearms skill. Strength and firearms, when shooting a firearm in melee range. Dexterity and firearms, when shooting off the hip slash, no aiming. Stamina and firearms, in a firefight after a long day with no sleep. Charisma and firearms. Talking at a gun convention about the importance of gun ownership. Manipulation and firearms. Concealing a gun on you so others can't notice as easily. Composure and firearms. When shooting in a gunfight or aiming for that perfect shot. Intelligence and firearms. When explaining how a firearm works or knowing details about a firearm. Wits and firearms. Knowing that an enemy is going to have to reload before he fires again. Resolve and firearms. Repairing a broken firearm during a firefight. Many of these roles can be switched up as well. In the case of repairing a firearm, intelligence can be used to determine what is wrong with a firearm. Wits can be used to determine what is wrong with a damaged firearm in the middle of a shootout. Dexterity can be used for replacing small parts, fine details. Composure can be used to look calm when under a lot of pressure while repairing it. Strength can be used to dismantle a stuck bullet. Let's talk about social roles. Okay, let me start off by saying this is the most difficult of the roles to figure out how to do. Some people are really good at talking and some are not. When a player is quiet and shy, but his character has a 5 charisma and is a very good-looking character, it is unfair for role-playing to determine this character's fate when dealing with others. I like to have the player make a roll and then role-play the result. If the above character gets 6+ successes but role-plays the encounter horribly, I edit it by asking the player to tell me his end goal. What does he hope to gain? Seduce the girl at the bar, talk his way past the guard, or convince the person they failed to give them another chance? The role determines this outcome. Here is how I figure out the roles needed for this. Attitude is the target's attitude towards the character. The difficulty modifier is what each side gets as a dice penalty or bonus, determined by their attitude towards the other. Loyal or devoted individuals may risk their careers and possibly their lives for you. They readily give any information they think will help you, whether requested or not, and may perform services such as watching captives, providing medical care, breaking down doors, or distracting the cops. They will follow your lead and agree to your plan with few questions asked, even if it seems risky. Friendly or weak individuals will not readily harm you, and they may try to prevent others from harming you. They will answer any questions you ask if they seem reasonable or safe. They will recommend reliable service providers, speak up on your behalf, or give the occasional helpful tip. They are willing to be convinced of your plans, and they will sign on if the benefits are clear. Indifferent individuals will not go out of their way to harm you without clear orders or benefit. They may answer some questions if politeness or profit beckon. They will not bestir themselves to help you without clear reason. Your plans strike them as risky and foolish, but they are unlikely to actively prevent you from trying them as long as they can stay safely out of it. Suspicious individuals suspect your intentions might be unwholesome, illegal, or otherwise dangerous, but they have no reason to harm you. Yet. They respond with minimal courtesy or professionalism. They are unlikely to listen to your plans unless you show immediate reasons or benefits for doing so. Aggressive or unfriendly individuals will harm you if they think they can get away with it, keep a wary eye on you, and will egg others on to harm you. They will clam up in your presence, or they offer misleading answers to questions. They will give bad advice if they give advice at all. They will not help you, and they will oppose your plans regardless of their merits, unless helping you is the only thing keeping them comparatively unharmed. Hostile or violent individuals will risk their careers and possibly their lives to hurt and possibly kill you. They will actively prevent others from giving you answers, help, or comfort of any kind. They may even help your enemies. They will certainly do everything possible to sabotage your plans, even if they cannot immediately torpedo them. The rules state that on a critical or I also accept 4 successes or more on margin of success, on a social roll, the target becomes more favorable by 1 level. On a total failure, the target becomes less favorable by 1 level. So the character is stopped by the bouncer of a bar and tells the character that the bar is at capacity and must come back later. The player tells me that his character wants to persuade the bouncer to let him in. I tell the player to roll charisma and persuasion. The bouncer is indifferent, so he gains a dice to his pool to resist the attempt. The other thing to consider is what is needed to get past the doorman. You can also modify the difficulty of a social test depending on the power differential between the parties, incentives offered, and the type and manner of the request. Is it his job if he allows him in, or does it really matter if the bouncer allows a few extra people in? If it is the bouncer's job, he will need loyal or devoted to get through, friendly if it doesn't really matter. If the mob runs the club, and there is a chance of more than losing his job, but getting an arm broke or something even worse, I could add a couple more die to resist the persuasion attempt. The player rolls 4 successes than the bouncer. With a 4 margin, it raises the bouncer up 1 attitude to friendly. He says, "I like you, bub, but I could lose my job if I let you in." If the margin was 8 and the bouncer was loyal or devoted, he would have allowed him entrance. Presence with social roles. So using Presence 1 as an example of how I handle social roles using the above example. The character activates awe. The bouncer isn't aware that he is being affected by it. If the bouncer was aggressive or unfriendly to the character and suddenly realized that they were drawn to the character, I would consider him aware to resist, but he isn't, so it is successful without a resisted roll. The character has 2 dots in presence, so now he adds the 2 dice to their social roll, and because he didn't resist the awe, I would move the indifferent to friendly or weak. This removes the extra die I gave to the bouncer to resist and makes the 4 successes enough to allow him entrance into the club. Basically, I turn up the disciplines up a notch. Just like awe, when entrancement is used, the target immediately moves to friendly no matter where they originally began on the attitude. So, a road-raged madman pulls over the player's car and is ready to beat the tar out of him. When he gets to the character's car, he rolls to resist entrancement. If he fails, he moves straight to friendly and apologizes for losing his temper. The character can also roll to convince him to do things according to the margin of success, allowing him to add 3 dice to his roll as well. Very powerful stuff at level 3. No matter what game you're playing in the World of Darkness 5th edition, I hope that you were able to learn something new or pick up on some tricks that I use to try in your own games.